All right, this week I thought I'd talk about the different ways in which I would convert a lawn into a useful growing space using the minimum amount of effort possible. I think that traditional method of starting a garden where you might strip the turf off, turn the turf upside down in order to let the grass die off, and then till the soil, kind of break it up until it's fine enough that you could sow plants into. I think that's like quite a lot of work for not enough return, really. This is how I started my veggie patch 2 years ago. I marked out the area I wanted the beds to be with a string line. Next I put down cardboard to suppress the grass and the weeds, and then I added a layer of compost. Here I have a decent pile that I'm spreading out over the cardboard at around 2 or 3 inches thick. Using this method on your first year, you do need a lot of compost in order to start the process off. After that, it becomes easier. You can make your own compost and just top the beds up each year. For the first year, because you need so much of it, you want to find somewhere where you can get a lot of compost cheaply. I got mine from the local council, green waste compost. You can also get it from landscape supply stores, which is another way of getting it reasonably cheaply. If you don't want to pay for compost at all, there are other methods actually, which I'll show you next. Behind me is a bit of an experiment that I'm calling strawberry versus kikuyu. So with this, kikuyu, if you don't know it by the way, is a grass that spreads with rhizomes and it's a pretty hardy stuff. But strawberries also spread in a similar way, and I thought, I wonder if those two just kind of fight it out and I tip the scales in favour of the strawberries a bit, what will happen? So what I did was I put down several layers of brown paper that I just happened to have lying around, but cardboard effectively. And then I stabbed holes in that and planted the strawberry plants into that. I then put pine needles over the top of it, mainly just to keep the paper in place. And the strawberries have done pretty well. So once that kind of cardboard papery stuff had rotted away, the strawberries then spread and they've now pretty much taken over. There's still the odd blade of grass coming through, but that's pretty good considering there was almost no effort in setting that up. Again, this is strawberries, but I've done this patch slightly differently. This involves a bit more effort, but I think it should be worth it. So the problem with that is that it's on a slight angle, so it's quite hard to kind of keep mulch onto it, and I figure that the water is going to kind of drain off faster that way. So I actually dug this, but I didn't strip the turf, I just kind of churned it all up. As soon as you have done that, obviously the grass roots are all kind of in the soil, so it's still going to kind of grow up. And so to suppress that, again, I put down a load of paper and then again pine needles on top of that. This time when I planted the strawberries into the soil, because I haven't got the greatest soil, I kind of dug a hole about this big, filled that with my own compost and then put the plants into that. The reason for that, I figured that gives the plant enough time to kind of establish. There's enough compost there for that to grow for, let's say, a year or two. Within that time, all of the kind of mulch that I'm putting on should have rotted down and improved the soil around it, and then the strawberry roots should be able to kind of spread into that. And hopefully all of these plants will just eventually kind of intermingle as they send out their little rhizomes or whatever they are, suckers, and they'll just fill this whole patch. Again, not that much effort really, and it works. This is what I've done for all of these beds around here. I just put a tarp down to kill off the grass. Digging through straight grass, it's just really hard work with all the kind of roots and everything. But putting this down for a while until all the grass is dead just makes digging, if you have to dig, so much easier. The only reason I'm digging at all around here is just because of this slight slope. I find it a little bit easier to work with a bed when it's flat. If this was flat already, I wouldn't even bother. I'd just put cardboard down. So these two beds I made in exactly the same way. That one I did a couple of years ago, and this one I've just been working on recently. So I did the same thing. So I put the tarp down, that killed all the grass, then I dug through it. and then put cardboard, and then there's quite a bit of wood chip mulch on here. The wood chip is mainly to hold the cardboard in place so it doesn't blow away, but also it suppresses the weeds, and when it rots down it will give a decent kind of fertile bed for me to plant into. So in this bed there's just 2 trees, and in that one. And the reason I've made the bed so big is it allows me to plant other things around the trees. So I'm planting things like comfrey and calendula, there's some blueberry bushes here, and I'm just going to keep planting into that. Partly it's just to get that kind of diversity going, and partly it attracts beneficial insects that then eat the insects that are potentially eating the fruit. I find it works a lot better rather than just having a tree surrounded by a load of grass. When I'm putting beds in, I always do everything based off 600mm or 2 foot, and that's because those are the measurements that are used within kitchen cabinetry. So it's 2 foot because your arm's about that length, and that allows you to reach to the back of the cupboard. So I double that size to 4 foot so that I can reach into the middle of the bed from either side. And then I have the pathways usually at 600, and that gives me plenty of width to be able to get a wheelbarrow down. You could go smaller than that, so 2 foot would get a wheelbarrow. You could just do 1 foot if you're not going to put a wheelbarrow down it. And it also depends on your size of your garden. I'm quite an impatient person, and I'm always in a bit of a rush to get things done. And when I did this bed, I just threw cardboard down, put compost on it, and got on with planting. In retrospect, if I was doing it again, I would probably have a little bit of a dig around in the soil to see what the soil underneath this is like. You know, some people will advocate taking soil samples and sending them to the lab and seeing what's missing out of their soil. And I'm not really into stuff like that. I kind of think that just by getting a spade and digging into the soil, you can tell quite a lot. If you've got worms running through your soil, then you know it's really decent quality. You can get a sense of how it drains quite quickly just by digging a hole and pouring some water into it. If I was doing this again, I'd probably have checked that out. I find that some areas of this garden work really well, namely this sort of first section, and then other areas don't, and I think that is because over the years the sort of clay beneath the soil has been really heavily compacted. If I was doing this again, I probably would have had a little bit of a dig around, see what I can find, and try and remedy those problems before putting on cardboard. I've not had this problem before, and in gardens that I've done before, I've just, you know, cardboard and then compost has been the way forward, but with this one, I perhaps should have dug a little bit. Let me know what you guys are doing in your gardens. I'm particularly interested in that difference between no dig or no till and digging the soil. I'd be curious to hear what your opinion is on that. All right, thanks so much for watching. See you next week.